She was never meant to survive the wedding. She was meant to kneel, to smile, to bleed, to bind herself to a king she didn't choose, and die for a kingdom that never loved her. But something changed. One breath, one broken vow, one forbidden memory, and everything unraveled. Now, she remembers every life, every death, every version of herself they tried to silence. But this time, she won't run. This time, she rewrites everything. This is the story of the bride who shattered time, and the gods who tried to stop her. The wind howled like a warning through the towering trees of an unfamiliar forest, their branches frozen mid-sway as though time had paused mid-breath. Evelyn stumbled forward, her boots sinking into soil that felt too soft, like damp velvet underfoot. The air smelled of copper and old parchment, sharp and stale, as though no one had breathed here for centuries. Behind her, the stone arch she had emerged from glowed faintly, a dying echo of whatever force had brought her here. And above, strangely, impossibly, the sun hung in the exact center of the sky, unmoving. No warmth, no motion, just silence, pregnant and wrong. The ground trembled. Hoofbeats approached. She turned just in time to see a company of riders break through the woods, clad in pale armor with insignias she didn't recognize, an hourglass split in two, etched in rust. Their leader, a woman with hair like silver wire and eyes too still, leveled a spear at Evelyn's chest. "The bride has arrived," the woman whispered, more to the wind than to Evelyn. Her voice held no joy, only resignation, as if she'd rehearsed those words for 100 lifetimes. Evelyn opened her mouth to speak, but the words died in her throat. The ring on her finger, one she didn't remember putting on, was glowing softly. They brought her in chains, though not roughly, as though handling something sacred and breakable. Eloria revealed itself slowly, carved from white stone and time itself. The castle rose out of the mist like something built in a forgotten dream, its towers twisted in impossible spirals, its bridges looping back on themselves. People filled the courtyards, but their movements were strange, deliberate. A woman hung linens on a line, then turned to repeat the gesture again and again. A child skipped in a loop, one leg always frozen in the air. Evelyn's skin crawled. No one aged. No one noticed her. They said little as they led her through the great halls. Murals along the walls shifted as she passed. Scenes of weddings, wars, and winter storms that never fully formed. The final corridor led to a chamber where a man stood at the center, unmoving beneath a ceiling of broken stars. Prince Thorian Erwin. His presence was heavy, magnetic, like gravity reoriented itself around him. He wore a silver circlet and a guarded expression carved from porcelain. "You are Evelyn Thorne," he said, not asked. His voice was deep, precise, as if every syllable was counted against a debt. "And I am the man time has cursed to wait for you." The room vibrated with tension neither of them could explain. Evelyn clenched her fists, trying to remember how she'd gotten here. London, the clock, her father, the deal. But none of it felt real anymore. Thorian circled her slowly, eyes studying her like a page half-remembered. "You were chosen," he murmured. "Not by me, not even by the prophets, by the fault in time itself." His words made no sense, yet each syllable landed in her chest like a stone. Then came the command. In 3 days' time, they were to wed. The ceremony would rekindle the heart of time and end the loop, or so the kingdom hoped. Evelyn's voice finally found its way through the fog of fear. "I didn't agree to this." Thorian's gaze didn't soften. "Neither did I. But your presence here proves the wheel is turning again. You are the first variable in a century." He stepped closer, and for a moment, she saw it in his eyes. Not cruelty, not control, but something worse. Desperation carefully caged behind dignity. He bowed slightly. "You have until the eve of the wedding to understand who you are, and what it will cost if you refuse." As the guards led her away, Evelyn turned back, and in the polished floor behind Thorian, she saw it. A figure watching them through the reflection. Cloaked, unmoving, eyes of gold. The days passed, but the sun never moved. Morning, noon, and night bled into one another like brushstrokes on a canvas left in the rain. Within the walls of Eloria, Evelyn was treated like a relic, dressed, taught, guided, yet never truly spoken to. Servants adjusted her gowns, Stylists pinned glass ornaments into her hair, and priests whispered riddles in languages older than ink. But none answered her simplest question. What happens if I say no? The silence was louder than any threat. The castle's halls mirrored her thoughts, twisting, repeating, whispering. She was shown the altar in the Temple of Hours, where the wedding would take place. It was carved entirely from the bones of extinct trees, and in the center stood an hourglass taller than a man. Inside it, instead of sand, fragments of light and shadow flowed back and forth, like a heartbeat, with no rhythm. The heart of time, the high priestess had said, her voice barely audible over the low hum of magic. It waits to be claimed. Evelyn felt a deep ache in her chest, as if something ancient inside her recognized this place, but not with fondness. One night, as she stared into the mirrors lining her bedchamber, she saw movement that wasn't hers. A shadow passed behind her reflection. Slow, deliberate. She turned, but no one was there. The reflection lingered an extra second, her own face blinking out of sync. And then, as the room plunged into sudden cold, she saw him clearly. A man cloaked in crimson, standing just behind the veil of the mirror. Lucien Varel. His eyes were golden, impossibly bright in the dim. His voice didn't come from his mouth, but from her memories. You don't belong to him, he said. But I don't belong to you either, Evelyn whispered, confused. Lucien tilted his head, eyes flickering. Not yet. But once, you chose me, and time punished us both. That night, she dreamed of a garden cloaked in twilight, and a kiss that felt like goodbye before it ever happened. She woke breathless, unsure if it was memory, or prophecy, or madness. She found herself tracing the ring on her finger again and again, drawn to it, repelled by it. It felt alive now, warm one moment, cold the next. Outside, she began to notice the cracks in the kingdom, birds repeating the same call in loops, guards twitching with the same motion at the same time each hour. It was a performance, she realized, a kingdom acting out a play written long ago. Days before the wedding, Thorian came to her chambers, not as a prince, but as a man unraveling. His words were carefully folded, but the truth leaked through. You think me cruel, he began, but I have watched this kingdom rot from the inside, one repeated breath at a time. Do you know what it's like to bury the same brother for 100 years? Evelyn looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time saw a kind of fracture in his eyes, like glass barely holding under pressure. I don't want this any more than you, he said, but we are no longer people. We are symbols. The ceremony drew closer, and with it, the weight of inevitability. Evelyn was fitted into her wedding gown, a thing of impossible design, threaded with strands of frozen time glass that shimmered with every movement. As she was led into the temple, her vision blurred. She saw herself walking this path before. She saw a hand reaching out to stop her. She saw blood on the altar. But when she blinked, it was gone. The bells began to chime. 12 notes, though the hour was always the same. As she approached Thorian beneath the broken dome of the sky, a mirror cracked on the temple wall. Lucien watched from within, and this time, he smiled. The mirror never stopped cracking. By the next morning, it had fractured into a spiderweb of lines, though no blow had touched it. Evelyn stood before it, heart beating like a hunted thing, drawn to the growing weakness in the glass, as if something inside called to her. Behind her, the world of Aloria continued its cycle. Gowns changed, bells chimed, the sun stood still. But inside this reflection, time moved. Fast, wild, and wrong. Then, like breath on skin, his voice came again. You've forgotten what we were. This time, Lucien did not appear in glass. He stepped through it. He did not walk so much as unfold into the room, shadows around him reluctant to let go. His cloak moved like smoke in reverse, curling upward instead of down. Golden eyes, haunted and familiar, met hers with the weight of 10 lifetimes. Evelyn staggered back, but he didn't follow. You don't remember me? Not yet, Lucien said softly, as if it hurt to speak. But you will. The echoes always come for you. Eventually. She tried to reply, but her voice caught in her throat, not from fear, but from the overwhelming sensation of recognition in her bones, like music she hadn't heard since childhood, like love buried under centuries of dust. In a flicker of motion, he reached out, not to touch her, but to place something on the floor between them. A silver pendant, shaped like a fractured hourglass. When she picked it up, memories exploded behind her eyes. Not visions, sensations. The warmth of Lucian's hands, the weight of his grief, a promise whispered under the ruins of a falling star. And then, betrayal, blood on her hands, a voice screaming, her own. She dropped the pendant as if it burned her. Lucian's gaze didn't change. "You remember the pain," he said, "but not the reason." Then he was gone. No sound, no shadow, just the mirror, mended. That night, Evelyn did not sleep. She wandered the castle halls like a ghost. Each corridor whispered something new, voices she couldn't place calling her name, doors locked behind her before she realized she'd entered, and portraits on the walls whose eyes followed her even after she passed. She found herself drawn to the abandoned West Wing, a place even the servants refused to clean. Dust clung to the air like fog. There, in a shattered study, she found something she shouldn't have, a ledger of names, brides, each one crossed out, and beside one, scrawled in faded ink, E.T. 3 years ago, Lucien had been banished for breaking the sacred cycle. He had rewritten a bride's fate. The punishment was not exile, it was erasure. His name was stripped from records, his memory from minds. Only Evelyn remembered now, and only in shards. Thorian found her in the West Wing not long after. "You should not be here," he said, eyes colder than usual. "That part of the castle no longer exists." But when she showed him the ledger, he tore the page without flinching. "You are not one of them," he said. "You were always meant to be mine." Evelyn looked at him for a long time, heart racing. "You're lying." "I'm protecting the future. By rewriting the past?" "No," Thorian said, stepping closer, his expression unreadable. "By finally ending it." But in the flickering candlelight, she saw it again, a shadow on the wall that didn't match their movements. Lucian was watching, and this time, he wasn't alone. The doors to the Timekeeper's tower were never meant to open again. Iron vines had twisted themselves around its base, as though nature itself tried to bury it. But Evelyn stood before it at twilight, though in Aeloria, twilight was more metaphor than truth. With the silver pendant Lucian had left her humming against her chest. When she pressed it to the seal, the vines receded like frightened snakes. The door groaned as it opened, breathing out air that reeked of rust, ink, and something older, something like memory decaying in a bottle. Inside, the tower spiraled upward in a staircase without rails, the walls lined with broken timepieces. Some ticked backward, others clicked once and fell silent. A few glowed faintly, as if remembering how to breathe. With each step, Evelyn felt something peeling back inside her, like skin over an old wound. And then she saw it, a mural stretching across the stone wall, a woman in a crimson gown, a man cloaked in smoke, a kingdom fractured behind them, and beneath the image, one word carved deep, Thorn. The upper chamber of the tower had once been a sanctum of the timekeepers. Now it was a graveyard of glass. Hourglasses filled every surface, floating midair in slow, hypnotic revolutions. Each one bore a name, etched in silver, suspended above the sand. And there, pulsing faintly, Evelyn found it. Her name, but not once. Dozens of times. Evelyn Thorn. E. Vale. The chosen bride. Each hourglass filled with sand of different shades, black, red, gold, each still, frozen mid-fall. Some shattered, others just empty. Her hand hovered over the closest one. The moment she touched it, a tidal wave of memory surged through her. The garden at dusk, Thorian offering her a crown she never wanted, Lucian at her back whispering, "You can still run." Then, fire, screams, a wedding undone by blood, a betrayal Evelyn had committed, or perhaps suffered, over and over again. She collapsed to the ground, gasping. Around her, the hourglasses began to tremble, their sand spinning faster. The tower recognized her, and it was angry. From the shadows emerged a voice, calm and clear. "You were the first to refuse the cycle." Evelyn turned, and there stood a figure draped in blue crystal armor, her face ageless and unreadable. "We buried your name, erased it from the songs of time, but now you've returned." Again, Evelyn's breath caught. "Who are you?" The woman bowed slightly. "A warden of the vault. We guard what should be forgotten." She motioned to the hourglasses. Each one is a version of you. Each one, a choice. The world loops not because of fate, but because of you. The revelation shattered something deep in her. Her legs failed. Her voice, barely a whisper. I did this? No, the warden said. You tried to end it. That is your curse. A crack sounded above them. One of Evelyn's hourglasses exploded in a burst of light. Another followed. Then another. The tower shuddered. You've opened the vault. Time remembers now. And she stopped. From the far end of the chamber, Lucienne stepped into the light. The echo of shattering hourglasses still rang in Evelyn's ears as she descended the tower, each step heavier than the last. She didn't notice the blood on her palms until she reached the palace gates, not her own, but someone else's, left as a streak across the door she'd pushed open in panic. The castle, always eerily quiet, felt different now, not silent, watchful, as though the walls themselves strained to hear her next move. She walked the corridor barefoot, ringless, holding the pendant like a weapon, and when the throne room doors creaked open, she found Thorian alone, waiting in the dark. He didn't rise from the dais. He didn't speak. His crown sat crooked, discarded beside him like a title he no longer respected. Evelyn stepped forward, fire in her breath. How many of me have you buried? She demanded. Thorian looked up slowly. His face, always stoic, cracked, not with anger, but grief. All of them, he said. And I remember every one. The admission stole the wind from her lungs. Why? She asked, quieter now. Because the world ends without you, he whispered. And because it ends with you too. Then, finally he stood. And what she saw wasn't the cold prince from the ceremony, but a man consumed by memory. His hands trembled. His voice shook. You weren't the first Evelyn Thorne, he said. But you were the first to see me, the first to choose love over prophecy. That broke everything. He led her to the Hall of Mirrors, now darkened, the reflections slower than before. He stopped before one frame, cracked diagonally, and touched it gently. Inside, a scene played on endless loop. A wedding, a kiss, an explosion of white light. We were happy once, he said, for 7 minutes. The rest of the story spilled from him like a confession. The original cycle had been broken when Evelyn chose Lucian. Her choice disrupted the crown of hours, the central relic that balanced time across the realm. In desperation, Thorian offered himself to the gods of Aeloria. They demanded permanence, he said. They demanded sacrifice. His brother, the true heir, was erased from existence. Thorian became king of a kingdom caught in stasis, and the cycle reset, over and over. And each time Evelyn returned, the gods demanded her fate be rewritten, more loyal, more obedient, more blind. Evelyn's voice cracked. You loved me, and you let them rewrite me? I tried to save the world, he replied, and they said it required forgetting love. Her eyes welled with fury. Then you didn't save anything. You just locked us in a story where no one gets to win. He stepped closer. If I free you, the loop ends. But so does Aeloria. Everyone here, they don't know their echoes. They think this is life. Can you be the one to end that? She backed away. You don't get to ask me that. But even as she said it, she realized he had been asking her that all along, just silently. And as she left the hall, shaken and splintered, she passed a servant girl repeating the same motion, folding a sheet again and again, humming a lullaby that Evelyn had heard in her dreams. It hit her like thunder. The people weren't just echoes. They were versions of herself, scattered across the kingdom. The world wasn't looping. She was. At first it was subtle. A flower wilting too fast in a vase. A servant blinking twice in the span of a breath. A chandelier flickering between rust and polish in the same second. But then came the screams. Not from pain, but from confusion. People forgot where they were mid-sentence. Some aged a decade between one heartbeat and the next, while others regressed into childhood, crawling and crying. Evelyn watched it unfold from her window. Aeloria was unraveling. The threads of time, once frozen in place, now tangled and snapping like an old loom catching fire. In the great courtyard, a fountain collapsed in on itself, flowing backward, then upward, then vanishing. People ran in circles, some reliving memories out loud, others trapped in moments that didn't belong to them. One man wept for a daughter who hadn't been born yet. A girl stood frozen, whispering her mother's lullaby in Evelyn's voice. Evelyn staggered back, her vision swimming with vertigo. This wasn't just a magical glitch. This was identity collapse. Time wasn't breaking. People were. She ran to the old chapel, the only place in the castle that hadn't changed in 100 cycles. There, she found Lucian, waiting by the crumbling altar. His eyes were bloodshot with strain, but his smile was razor-sharp. "You feel it now, don't you?" he said. "The weight of every version of yourself clawing to be real. That's what happens when you start to remember." Evelyn stepped back. "You're the one doing this." "No," he whispered, stepping closer. "You are. I'm just pulling back the veil." Lucienne revealed the truth like a blade dragged slowly over skin. The entire kingdom had been constructed around her soul, around the decision she made a lifetime ago to abandon the sacred cycle. When she refused the crown, reality fractured. The gods, enraged by her defiance, split her essence into thousands of shards and used her as the glue to hold time still. Each loop, each bride, was another attempt to fix her mistake. "They didn't trap you," Lucian said. "They turned you into the cage." And now that she remembered, truly remembered, the cage was collapsing from the inside. The wind outside the chapel howled like a dying beast. Storm clouds spiraled in impossible patterns, lightning striking in silence. Evelyn looked at Lucian, trembling. "And what do you want from me?" He didn't hesitate. "Come with me. We can restart the story, not the cycle, but the world. On our terms. No gods, no fate, just choice." Her hands shook. "You don't even know if that's possible." Lucian's smile was tragic. "Neither did you, the first time you said yes." Before she could answer, the doors burst open, and Thorian entered, sword drawn, flanked by guards half glitching between youth and decay. His voice boomed with desperation. "She's not yours, Lucian. She belongs to Eloria." Lucian met his gaze, calm. "She doesn't belong to anyone." Evelyn stepped between them, the air around her pulsing like a broken heartbeat. "I won't be fought over again." But as she spoke, her skin shimmered, flashes of herself at different ages, different clothes, different fates. The versions were merging, and time screamed. The path to the Nexus was not carved in stone or guarded by steel. It opened beneath Evelyn's feet like a sigh, a ripple in the air, a shiver in the soul. She stepped through the fracture in reality as if stepping into a memory. The world folded inward, then stretched outward, then disappeared altogether. There was no up or down, no time, only silence. Then, as her breath caught in her lungs, she fell into light. She landed barefoot on an endless glass plain, beneath a sky that fractured like a broken prism. Every step echoed like a heartbeat. Around her, mirrors floated, not held by walls, but suspended midair, some the size of windows, others no bigger than a hand. Inside each one, herself, but not just herself, different versions. A bride in crimson armor, a rebel in chains, a queen with black eyes, a child crying in the ruins of a burning castle. Evelyn turned in slow horror as the mirrors shimmered to life, and spoke. "You ran," one version hissed, scars running across her collarbone like cracked glass. "You let Lucienne die, and still lost the kingdom." "No," said another, dressed in regal gold, her expression frozen. "You married Thorian, sacrificed yourself, and they called it peace." A third stepped out of her mirror entirely, barefoot and gentle-eyed. "You chose to destroy the heart of time, and we're all echoes now." The voices tangled together. Anger, regret, grief, hope. They circled her, surrounded her, reflected her back 1,000 ways. Evelyn dropped to her knees. "I didn't choose any of this," the scarred one laughed bitterly. "That's the only choice we all made." From the edge of the glass plane emerged 2 final mirrors, taller than the rest. In one, she saw herself cloaked in midnight, fingers tangled with Lucian's, wind roaring behind her as the world tore apart. In the other, she knelt before Thorian, the wedding crown heavy on her brow, and silence pressing down like snow. Both images pulsed, waiting, breathing. But Evelyn didn't move toward either. Instead, she asked, "What if I don't choose?" 1,000 Evelyns froze. The silence was louder than before. One final figure stepped forward. This one wore no crown, no gown, no chains. She was barefoot, face bare, hands empty. "You're not here to choose," she said gently. "You're here to integrate." Evelyn blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means becoming the version who remembers all the others, without letting them define you." Then, without warning, all the mirrors shattered inward, the glass folding into Evelyn's chest, heart, mind. And for the first time in her existence, she remembered everything. She remembered the laughter with Lucian under the dying moons, the cold of Thorian's kiss when he sacrificed himself to hold the cycle together. She remembered the blood, the gardens, the wars, the altars, and through it all, the same pain echoed, trying to break a world that was never meant to bend. And as she rose, glass cracking beneath her, Evelyn was no longer just a version of herself. She was all of them. And in the distance, the veil began to lift, showing a world crumbling, waiting, begging to be rewritten. When Evelyn returned, the sky had no color. The air tasted of ash and old iron. Eloria was dying, but not like a kingdom burned. It was unmaking itself. Trees folded like paper, towers unraveled thread by thread, and the people wandered the streets in silence, their eyes reflecting dozens of selves, as if each was cycling through versions of who they had been in other lives. Time no longer passed. It bled, and Evelyn walked through it like a storm-given form. She was no longer dressed in silk or silver. Her gown was woven from strands of memory, red from the blood she'd spilled, black from the choices she hadn't made, gold from the pieces of herself that had survived. Her eyes shimmered not with magic, but with the weight of 1,000 truths. When she entered the throne room, the guards dropped their weapons. They didn't kneel. They simply vanished, their roles in the story complete. And there, on the fractured throne, sat Thorian, crown cracked, robes in tatters, eyes hollow. "You're too late," he rasped. "There's nothing left to save." "I didn't come to save it," Evelyn said. "I came to end it properly." Thorian laughed, a broken, bitter sound. "Then you're no different from him." She stepped forward. "I'm nothing like either of you anymore." Lucian appeared as if summoned by the thought, stepping from the shadow of the crumbling stained glass window, wind trailing behind him like a cloak of torn futures. "And yet," he said, smiling softly, "you once loved us both." Evelyn didn't flinch. "I still do, but I won't choose between men who built their legacies from my bones." Her voice echoed, not just in the room, but through the very fabric of time. The heart of time, the massive hourglass at the altar of the temple, had shattered. Its remains floated above the city, sand spiraling upward in defiance of gravity, each grain a moment from another life. Evelyn raised her hand, and the sand responded. It recognized her. Thorian tried to rise, but his legs failed. "If you rewrite the world, you'll erase all of this," he warned. "Everything we've been." Lucian, watching, said nothing. For once, even he didn't know what she would do. Evelyn turned to both of them, and her voice dropped, quiet, but unshakable. "You shaped the past. I carry it, but I will not repeat it. I will not rule over ghosts." She walked to the center of the broken hall, and the world bent around her. The memories she'd absorbed from the Nexus began to rise, fragments of lives, of deaths, of choices. In each of them, she was incomplete. Now she was whole. She wasn't the bride of prophecy, or the queen of sacrifice. She was the bride of ruin, the one who would unmake the lie, and from it, shape the truth. The ground cracked beneath her feet. The stars spun. The gods began to wake. And Evelyn spoke the first true word the world had heard in centuries. Enough. The stars stopped moving. Above the ruins of the temple, the sky split open like parchment soaked in flame. From the wound in the firmament descended a staircase of light, spiraling into infinity. Evelyn stepped onto it barefoot, each step burning away the remnants of what she had once been. The obedient bride, the runaway lover, the reluctant queen. Below her, Eloria crumbled into mist. Above her, the gods waited. They did not wear crowns or robes. They had no faces. They took the form of memories. Her mother's hands, Lucian's voice, Thorian's eyes. Their bodies flickered like flame, always shifting, always familiar. "You were made to love," one said, in the voice of her childhood lullaby. You were chosen to obey, another added, in Thorian's tone. You were never meant to choose, whispered Lucien's echo. Evelyn stood before them in silence, then whispered, Then why did you give me a heart at all? The platform beneath her shifted, and she was no longer herself. She stood inside her first wedding, a crown on her head, Thorian at her side, her smile, perfect, painted, hollow. The gods whispered. This was the right path. The illusion twisted. Lucian appeared, bloodied, reaching for her from the shadows. Run, he said, like before, or we all die. Evelyn felt the pull, not from either man, but from the emptiness inside her, the part she had always tried to fill with duty or desire. I did everything for others, she said aloud, and I still became the villain in every version. The gods conjured the battlefield next, one of her past lives where she had chosen fire instead of surrender. The dead piled around her, her own hands covered in blood. When given power, said a god, now sounding like herself, you chose violence. Evelyn stepped forward. Because you left me no other weapon. The battlefield dissolved. The light dimmed. Silence fell. And then the last illusion came. Herself as a child, curled in a tower room, watching the stars flicker from her prison window. What would you say to her? The gods asked. Evelyn knelt, tears in her eyes. You are not broken, she said to the little girl. You are becoming. Then she stood, turned to the divine tribunal, and spoke, not with magic, but with the weight of every life she'd lived. I was not made for your story. I am the story, and I refuse to end it the same way again. The gods screamed. The sky shook. Fire spiraled downward, not to burn her, but to test her truth. Flames licked her skin, showing images. Lucian dying in her arms, Thorian sacrificing everything, her own death, again and again. But she did not falter. She did not turn away. And when the flames receded, she remained, whole. The light shattered, the staircase dissolved. Evelyn floated alone in the dark, until a heartbeat pulsed beneath her feet. A new world, a new rhythm. The gods were silent now. She had passed, and below her, Eloria waited to be rewritten. When Evelyn stepped back onto Elorian soil, the ground itself bent beneath her, not in fear, but in reverence. The palace was gone, the city in fragments, and yet everything felt clearer than it ever had. The fog of fate had lifted. The heartbeat of the realm now echoed with her own. Above, the sky was silver and black, stars watching like ancient witnesses. She carried no crown, no sword, only her voice, and the truth of who she had become. Lucien waited beneath the broken arch of the garden temple, where once he had kissed her under false stars. He looked at her with sorrow and longing, but did not move forward. You did it, he said. You broke them. Evelyn shook her head. No, I freed myself. That's not the same. He studied her carefully. Then what happens now? Her answer was quiet. Now I decide what deserves to remain. Across the valley, in the remnants of the throne room, Thorian knelt before the last flame of the old world, the only ember that hadn't gone out. He looked up as Evelyn approached, and she saw it in his face. Not pride, not regret, but exhaustion. A man who had held the fabric of reality together by force of will alone. You came, he murmured. I didn't expect you would. She stepped close enough to see the cracks in his armor. I almost didn't, she said. But you were a part of it too. I had to see it through. They stood in silence. Then Evelyn spoke. Not to Thorian, not to Lucien, but to the space between them. I loved you both, in every version. But this world was not built on love. It was built on silence, on sacrifice, on fear, and I will not carry that forward. Lucien stepped forward, desperation flaring in his voice. Then let's start over, together, a new world. No fate, no gods. Thorian shook his head. Or restore what was lost. Bring back order, purpose. But Evelyn looked at them both and whispered, You still don't see. I am not here to build the world you want. I am here to build the world that was denied to all of us. She lifted her hands, and the realm responded. Time folding, rewriting. But she did not erase them. She did not destroy them. Instead, she released them. Lucien fell to his knees, weeping. Not from pain, but relief. His bond to her, broken. Thorian stood, shaking, and nodded once. A silent blessing. Evelyn's voice echoed one last time. You may walk in the world we once dreamed of, but not as kings, and not as ghosts. She turned away. The wind followed her, and with each step, the ground reshaped. Cities rose from wildflower fields, people awoke from their loops, and the sky began to shift, no longer static, but alive. The new Eloria had no throne, no altar, no crown, only choice. And Evelyn, no longer bride, no longer curse, walked into it, free. It began as a whisper. In the quiet days after the world had begun to reshape, Evelyn wandered the edge of the new Eloria, where time flowed forward without faltering, and people dreamed again without fear. The sky's no Mayas trembled, and yet, the wind carried a name she hadn't spoken in years, her own, but not how she said it, how someone else did. She followed the echo to the edge of a glass lake that hadn't been there before, and in its reflection, she saw a different version of herself staring back. The woman in the water wore a crown made of bone. Her eyes were the color of silence, and her skin shimmered with all the lives Evelyn had let go. You forgot me, the reflection whispered, but I never left. Evelyn fell to her knees, heart hammering. She'd faced gods, rewritten fate, but this was the part of her that had wanted revenge, not freedom. The fragment she left behind when she chose integration over domination, the one that never surrendered. Suddenly the lake shattered upward, and from its surface rose a figure, not a memory, not a ghost, but a living version of Evelyn forged from rage and control. She called herself Nira. I am the one who would have ruled, Nyra said, not pleaded, not wept, not compromised. Evelyn stood, voice low. You're a piece of me, but you are not me. Nyra smiled. Not yet. The two clashed not with blades, but with will. Storms erupted as they stepped across shifting memories. Evelyn was pulled into visions she thought long gone. A version where she became a tyrant queen. Another where she killed Lucian to save Thorian. One where she let the world burn to end her pain. Nyra fed off these regrets like fire off dry leaves. You gave them mercy, Nyra hissed. But they would never have given you the same. Evelyn stumbled, doubt creeping in. Was this truth? But then she remembered the little girl in the tower, the girl who had once whispered to the stars, the girl who had dreamed of freedom not only for herself, but for everyone. That girl had never wanted to rule by fear. She'd wanted to be whole, and in that moment, Evelyn stood taller. I don't need to destroy you, she said. I need to forgive you. Nira screamed, not in anger, but in sorrow. Her form cracked like porcelain, darkness seeping out. Evelyn stepped forward, wrapped her arms around the fragment and whispered, I see you, I honor you, and I release you. The wind died, the lake sealed, and Evelyn stood alone once more, whole at last. The world stood still, not in fear, but in breathless anticipation. Evelyn climbed the last hill of the old world, where the stars bent closer, and the roots of time pulsed beneath the soil. The winds had quieted, the gods had fallen silent, and at her feet, the threads of history shimmered like veins of gold waiting to be rewoven. There was no altar here, no throne, only a blank canvas, trembling with possibility. She knelt, touching the earth, and felt every life that had come before. The women who had burned, the kings who had betrayed, the children who had never grown old. They lived within her, not as burdens, but as voices, memories, warnings. Evelyn whispered to them, not a command, but an invitation. This time we begin together. The power flowed through her not like fire or lightning, but like a tide, patient, deep, unstoppable. She did not remake the world with violence. She planted it like a seed. She unspooled time and rewrote the law not with control, but with choice. Seasons began to move again. Rivers chose new paths. People awoke no longer reciting scripts of fate, but asking questions. They remembered who they were, or who they wanted to become. From far away, Lucian watched, his eyes wet, a soft smile on his lips. He did not step forward. Neither did Thorian. They had become part of the earth, the sky, the legend. Not lovers to be chosen, but men who mattered once. And now, we're at peace with letting go. And Evelyn stood in the center of this quiet storm, and did not crown herself. She did not rise as queen. She simply breathed. And the world, for the first time, breathed with her. Years passed, but the story never ended, because it no longer needed to. In a quiet village beneath the cliffs of the new Eloria, children played in fields where once armies had fallen. They knew stories of a time-looped queen, of two great men who loved her, of gods who tried to control love, but to them it was a tale, not a prophecy, and that was the miracle. Sometimes, when the sky turned lavender and the wind smelled like memory, a woman walked among them, barefoot, cloaked in twilight. She smiled often, cried rarely, and spoke little, but her presence made the flowers bloom a little faster, the stars shine a little brighter. They called her the First, though she never gave them a name, and when the children asked where she came from, she would kneel, place her hand on their chest and say, "From where you're going." The world was not perfect, but it was free, and Evelyn, not queen, not bride, not savior, was finally home.